Hey everyone, it's Dan from Pro Guides here, bringing you the top 10 tips for support players. When playing a support, it can often feel as though you can't control the pace of the game as well as a core can. With these 10 tips, I want to help change that. Speaking of the support role, here's the question of the day. What is your favorite support hero to play in the current patch? Mine is definitely Quap. As a support player, it is easy to fall into the trap that you simply don't need to farm. However, if you are a Bane with only Tranquil Boots and Magic Wand by minute 30, you will have a significantly harder time casting spells when compared to having Tranquils, Magic Wand, Glimmer, and Force. In my opinion, the times you should prioritize farming is for when you need to acquire key items, such as Glimmer, Blink, or even a Force Staff, because these items will completely change how the next fight could go. Of course, you ideally don't want to take farm from your core, so by heading to the dead lane, you are hitting two birds with one stone. Generally, your cores are going to want to take safe farm because they don't want to risk the potential of dying. The dead lane is a risky place to acquire farm, but if you're a support that has an AoE nuke, you can safely farm from a distance. Don't be too worried about dying, for even if you die, it isn't the end of the world, the reason being that your value isn't that high. Pulling can be a tricky thing to do. You don't want your core to die, but your core also can't CS if the lane is pushed far forward. There are plenty of trees that an enemy support can walk around to get into position to use their spells on your core, and the enemy core has more room to harass your core if your wave isn't near a tower. If your creeps are near your tower, your core has the defense of the tower to fall back on, and has more space to react to an enemy support coming from the trees. That's why I think it's useful to know pulling timings as a support. This chart will help you immensely to know when to either pull or stack. On top of this, you can also know when the enemy support wants to stack or pull. When the enemy support is missing and the timing is approaching for pulling or stacking, you can be quite certain that the reason they left is to complete one of these actions. Otherwise, that support is just wasting time, which isn't encouraged. Be annoying to the other support and block the camp they're stacking or draw aggro from the creeps they're trying to pull. This will help your core remarkably since they're free to deal with only the enemy core at this point. In my opinion, the mid lane is arguably the strongest role for determining the pace of the game in this patch. Runes are an extension that not only helps the mid laners if they secure it, but they can also gank the side lane depending on the type of rune they get, which can be a blessing if the core you're supporting isn't able to farm well. That's why as a support, it is quite beneficial to help your mid secure a rune. This is more important for position 4s to do, but position 5s can do it as well. Definitely look to help secure a rune if your core doesn't need you. A great way to secure a rune is by placing your body in the river at this time, because you can ward off the enemy midway from the rune with the threat of your spells and auto attacks with your mid laner nearby. As a result of you being at mid though, your core in the side lane is now in danger at getting pressured if not dying. To leave your core in a more safe position, I recommend pushing out the wave and then pulling. The ideal scenario is to pull a stacked camp, because it will clear the entire creep wave that you pulled. This will make it so during the time you're gone, your wave is near your tower, which will keep your core protected in the meantime that you're gone. Usually, as a support, you would rather not take your core's CS, but if your core is not able to take the ranged, then by any means, take it. The ranged creep isn't worth getting denied, nor the damage it can do to your core if they try to CS it, especially if your core is a melee hero. The reason for this is because your core will usually aggro the enemy creeps onto your ranged creep. As a result, the enemy melee creeps act as a shield for the enemy ranged creep. If your core attempts to go for the ranged, then they will have the enemy heroes harassing them freely. On top of this, if your core tries to harass the enemy heroes, the enemy melee creeps will start aggroing onto your core. This onslaught does a significant amount of damage in a short span of time for little punishment to the enemy heroes. You can bypass the potential deny and damage to your core by using your auto attacks and spells to secure the ranged creeps. The times where you don't need to secure the ranged as a support is when your core has a spell that can get ranged creeps, like LC's Overwhelming Odds. In general, dying in Dota 2 is considered to be bad. However, when you're dying to a 5-man smoke gank, then it is what is considered by pros to be a good death. A good death is one where the resources invested by the enemy team is greater than the benefit of killing you. The 5-man smoke was intended to ideally find a core, so that they could threaten high ground, take Roche, or attain more farm while one of your cores was dead. If you're able to prevent one of your cores from dying in this scenario, I would consider that ideal. In order to achieve this, you can stand on high grounds when you notice that all the enemy heroes are missing for some time. I think it's crucial to be near your cores, particularly in the mid to late game. At this point, the enemy team sees your core as a juicy way of winning the next engagement because your core is a sitting duck in a lane. Lanes have to be pushed out because you don't want your buildings to be threatened by the enemy heroes. The farther out the lane is pushed onto the enemy side, the more dangerous it is for your core to be there. However, the enemy team won't wait for the creeps to be pushed up. Instead, they're likely to utilize the smoke to gank one of your cores. By being in the vicinity of your core, you can help save your core through the use of Glimmer, Force Staff, or Lotus Orb to buy it enough time for either your team to get there or for your core to escape. Whenever you have nothing better to do in Dota, generally stacking neutral camps should be your default action. Not to mention that in the last big patch, stacking got buffed by 5%. Your cores will be pleased with you, but do it for yourself too. I think stacking is as beneficial for your cores as it is for you as a support to clear. You get many levels and farm by clearing a large stack that will help you immensely as a support, especially if you were rather sacrificial during the laning phase of the game. If you need a stack, don't be afraid to tell your cores that that camp is yours. If you have an early Glimmer, Force, or Blink, you have the potential to save your cores during team fights, which they will appreciate. A team fight is happening, it's hectic, spells are being pressed, and heroes are dying. In my opinion, this is a great time to plant a ward down, specifically on a hill. Having vision in a team fight will help you assess where the enemies are. This is beneficial because you will have the information of knowing where their key heroes are, such as an Oracle. With this information, your team can better focus heroes without the worry of them being lost in fog. Not only will you know where the enemies are, but you can now use your spells and auto attacks on the enemies without any worry of the enemies juking you in fog. As a support, I find it easy to fall into the mentality that your life doesn't matter. However, your life does matter, just not as much as a core's life. So if you find yourself in a situation where the enemy heroes are likely to kill you, don't make it easy for them to do so. Try to the best of your ability to juke, use your spells, and use your items in order to be a nuisance to the enemy team. Throughout the game, you're more likely than not to die quite often. That's why if you're able to use your spells before dying, then do so. Through the course of the game, this will add up to a considerable amount of damage. During the early stages of the game, especially during laning, it isn't your priority to have wards on the map. Your cores and other support, specifically 4 role, should be able to ward where they want at this point. I think a reason 5 roles aren't primarily responsible during the laning phase for warding is because it is quite detrimental to leave a core in a lane alone. When the first couple of wards expire and the second set of wards are coming off cooldown around the 5-minute mark, your mid, safe lane, and off lane will need wards. If you as a support were to complete this task to have vision down, your core would not be able to CS because your enemies would soon figure out that you're missing. It would take over a minute to complete the warding trip. Another reason is that wards cost no money, so it is of no cost to your cores to plant their wards. Don't be afraid to use a smoke in order to get offensive wards placed on the map. These wards will help secure farm for your team, not to mention they could also lead to potential kills. Thanks for watching these support tips. I really appreciate you all taking the time, and I truly hope you enjoyed and learned something from these. Please subscribe for more content like this, and we will see you all in the next video.